So picture this. My neighbor, a man I genuinely thought I had a decent, if not somewhat detached, relationship with, decided one sunny afternoon that my beautiful ancient oak tree was an inconvenience. Not only did he decide it, he acted on it. He cut it down. And then he expected me to just accept it. Was I wrong for what I did next? For making him pay $30,000 for that tree? Tell me honestly if you would have done the same thing. Because in that moment, seeing my majestic oak reduced to a stump, I felt something snap inside me. That tree wasn't just a tree. It was a landmark, a memory, a living, breathing part of my home. And he just destroyed it. Let me take you back to how this whole nightmare began. I bought my house about 10 years ago. It's a lovely place nestled on a quiet street. And one of the biggest draws was the incredible, sprawling backyard. Dominating that backyard, right on the property line that separated my yard from my neighbor Mark's, was this magnificent oak. It was easily 60 feet tall, with branches that reached out like comforting arms, providing shade that made summer afternoons bearable and a home for countless birds. Experts later estimated it to be over 80 years old, a true sentinel of the neighborhood. I loved that tree. My kids, when they were younger, built a makeshift fort under its canopy, and we had countless family barbecues where its shade was the star attraction. It was more than just foliage. It was an integral part of my family's life, the backdrop to so many cherished memories. Mark and his wife Karen moved in next door about 5 years after I did. At first, things were cordial. We'd wave across the fence, exchange pleasantries about the weather, and occasionally borrow a cup of sugar or a tool. Mark was a retiree, a bit gruff around the edges, but generally seemed harmless. Karen was sweeter, always with a kind word. The only recurring minor point of contention was, you guessed it, the tree. Mark occasionally grumbled about the leaves falling into his yard, especially in autumn. I always offered to help rake, even went as far as to pay for a professional service to clear his gutters of any debris from my tree twice a year. I genuinely tried to be a good neighbor, to mitigate any inconvenience my tree might cause. I thought we had an understanding. He appreciated my efforts, or so I believed. He'd nod, thank me, and the topic would be dropped until the next fall. Never once did he express any serious distress or suggest that the tree was a major problem. He never said, "This tree has to go." Never. Then came the storm. It was a brutal one, a real freak of nature that hit our area about 6 months before the incident. High winds, torrential rain, the works. A few smaller branches from the oak did break off, some landing in my yard, a couple falling into Mark's. Nothing major. No structural damage to either house, just typical storm cleanup. I called my arborist the very next day to assess the tree's health and remove any compromised limbs. He assured me the oak was robust, healthy, and perfectly stable, just needed a bit of a trim. I even offered to have the arborist clear the debris from Mark's yard, which he graciously accepted. Or so I thought. A few weeks after the storm, Mark approached me. He seemed a little more agitated than usual. He said, "Your tree, it's a hazard. Those branches that fell, they could have hit my roof. I think it needs to be severely pruned back, like a lot." I explained that my arborist had just been out and confirmed the tree was healthy, that the fallen branches were a normal occurrence in a severe storm, and that I was diligent about its maintenance. I even offered to show him the arborist's report. Mark just scoffed. "Reports don't mean anything when a tree branch is crashing through your bedroom window, do they?" He was getting quite heated, which was out of character. I tried to calm him down, reiterating my commitment to the tree's safety and my willingness to address any specific concerns. I even suggested we could have a third-party arborist, one chosen by both of us, come and give an assessment and I'd pay for it. He just shook his head, muttered something about taking matters into his own hands and walked away, slamming his back door. I thought it was just an empty threat, a frustrated old man venting. I didn't truly believe he would do anything drastic. I sent him a friendly text later that day, reiterating my offer for a joint arborist consultation, but he never replied. Life continued, and I assumed the storm's agitation had simply passed. The tree stood tall as it always had. Then came that morning. I woke up to the sound of chainsaws, not just one but multiple roaring to life. My first thought was that a neighbor was doing some much-needed landscaping, maybe removing a dead shrub. I peered out my kitchen window and my blood ran cold. There in my backyard were 2 men, professional tree cutters, and Mark standing over them, gesturing wildly towards my oak tree. The chainsaws were already biting into its lower trunk. I sprinted outside, barefoot, still in my pajamas, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs.
Mark, what are you doing?
"Stop them, that's my tree," I yelled, my voice cracking with disbelief and rising panic. He turned, a smug, almost defiant look on his face. "It was a hazard, I told you. You wouldn't do anything, so I had to. It's on my property line, half of it's practically in my yard anyway." His reasoning was utterly baseless, a flimsy excuse. The tree was clearly, unequivocally, primarily on my side of the property line, with only a few branches extending over his. I had all the surveys and documents to prove it. I tried to reason with the tree workers, but they just shrugged, clearly just following orders, probably unaware of the property dispute. Mark stood there, arms crossed, a sickening smirk on his face as more chunks of my beautiful tree crashed to the ground. It was like watching a slow-motion execution of a beloved family member. I felt tears streaming down my face, hot and angry. I pulled out my phone, shaking, and started recording. "You are destroying my property, Mark. You are going to regret this." I screamed, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. He just laughed, a cruel, cold sound that echoed through the morning air. Within an hour, my majestic oak was a stump, a massive gaping wound in my backyard where a century of life once stood. The workers efficiently cleaned up, loaded the lumber, and drove off. Mark went back inside his house, closing the door as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. I stood there amidst the sawdust and the fresh, raw scent of cut wood, feeling completely hollowed out. The birds that usually nested in its branches were flying in bewildered circles overhead, their chirps sounding like mournful cries. My kids, who had woken up to the commotion, were now standing silently by the back door, their faces mirroring my own shock and sadness. "Dad, what happened to our tree?" my daughter whispered, her eyes wide and tearful. What could I say? That our neighbor, out of spite or ignorance, had just annihilated a piece of our home, a part of our lives. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Here I was, standing in my yard, looking at the brutalized remains of something I cherished, something that was legally mine, all because my neighbor decided he knew better. I felt a burning rage, a profound sense of violation. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have just let it go, tried to talk to him again, or would you have fought back legally, with everything you had? I'm genuinely curious to hear your thoughts, because in that moment the path wasn't entirely clear, but the desire for justice was overwhelming. I wish I could say I stormed over to Mark's house and confronted him, but I was too numb, too heartbroken in that moment. Instead, I retreated inside, my mind reeling. My wife, who had been out running errands, came home to find me in a daze, staring blankly out at the devastated backyard. When I explained what happened, she was as furious and devastated as I was. "We have to do something," she said, her voice trembling. "He can't just get away with this." And she was right. I couldn't let him get away with it. The first thing I did was call my arborist. He was aghast when I told him. He reiterated that the tree was healthy and confirmed that Mark had absolutely no right to cut it down without my permission, especially since it was primarily on my property. He immediately sent me a detailed report valuing the tree, not just for its lumber, but for its aesthetic, environmental, and emotional value. The number was significant. Next, I called a lawyer specializing in property disputes. This was not a friendly chat over the fence anymore. This was war. My lawyer, bless his meticulous heart, was ecstatic. "This is an open and shut case, especially with your arborist's report and your video footage," he told me, a glint in his eye. He explained the concept of trespass to chattels and diminution of property value. He also mentioned a specific law in our state that allows for treble damages, 3 times the actual value, when a tree is illegally cut down. My anger, which had been simmering, began to boil. Mark was not just going to replace the tree. He was going to pay for his arrogance and disrespect. My lawyer sent Mark a formal letter, detailing the legal consequences of his actions and outlining our demands. The letter specified the initial valuation of the tree from my arborist, which was already in the high 4 figures, and hinted at the possibility of treble damages. We requested $30,000 to cover the replacement cost of a mature oak, which, let's be realistic, wouldn't truly replace the 80-year-old Sentinel I lost, but... Finally, after weeks of back and forth, with the threat of a full-blown lawsuit looming over his head, Mark capitulated. His lawyer advised him that fighting this would not only be more expensive, but almost certainly result in a judgment against him for the full amount, plus my legal fees. I received a certified check for $30,000. $30,000. It felt surreal holding that check. It couldn't bring back my tree, but it was a powerful vindication. It was a stark reminder that actions have consequences, and that respecting property lines and your neighbors is not just a polite suggestion, but a legal obligation. Mark and Karen still live next door, but the dynamic has, understandably, changed irrevocably. We don't speak. There's an invisible wall between our properties, far more substantial than any fence. He avoids eye contact, and I certainly don't go out of my way to acknowledge him. The neighborhood knows too. Word travels fast, and I've received a surprising amount of support from other residents who were equally appalled by Mark's actions. I've started the process of planting a new tree, a young oak further back in my yard, away from the property line where it can grow safely and without fear of an arbitrary chainsaw. It will take decades to reach the grandeur of its predecessor, but it's a start. It's a symbol of hope and resilience, and a testament to the fact that sometimes you have to fight for what's yours, even if it means losing a neighbor. So, that's my story. It was a painful and frustrating experience, but ultimately I stood up for myself and for my property. I hope this serves as a cautionary tale for anyone who thinks they can just take what isn't theirs. Like this video if you are on my side in this whole ordeal. Subscribe for more stories like this where justice in some form prevails. And please share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Tell me, was I justified? Would you have pursued the full $30,000? I'll see you all in the next story.